Hello, and welcome to the BMES Professional Development webinar on Steps for Developing a Mentor Relationship to Jumpstart Your Career After Graduation. I'm Brian Plouffe, and I will be your moderator today. I currently serve as an Assistant Professor of Biomedical Engineering in the Department of STEM at Regis College and serve as the Program Director for Biomedical Engineering at Regis, and I am also on the BMES Education Committee. Before we start our speakers, I want to get a few announcements out. The archived recording will be available shortly after the webinar on the BMES website. Reminder, if you do want to submit any questions throughout the webinar, please use our online chat function. There is a question, all the questions will be addressed after the featured speaker presentations. And at the end, when we dismiss, please take a few minutes before you step away from your computer to fill out a brief survey following the webinar to provide us with feedback so we can improve on these webinars. So before we move on to our speakers, we do want to get a little bit of an assessment on who's in the house and who's listening. So please take a moment to fill out these polls as we go. There will be 4 of them that we will have. So it looks like we have mostly grad students and undergrads. We have a few postdocs as well as industry professionals. The next question, have you ever had a mentor? It looks like many of you have had a mentor, but there are several of you who have not had a mentor, so I'm hoping this webinar can help flourish a mentee-mentor relationship for you. Next, if you ever had a mentor, those who answered yes on the previous question, did your mentor relationship go well? So it looks like we have a 100% great mentor-mentee relationship. So this next polling question, which read, if a previous relationship did not go well, which apparently from our polls we do not have to answer this one, do you want to share why it did not work with the group? But we will be skipping this because everyone seemed to have had a great mentor relationship of those who have answered. Thank you, everybody, for answering the polling questions, and we will be moving on to our first speaker of the day, Shirali Nigam. She is the student member of the BMES Education Committee and currently serves as the George Washington University BMES Student Chapter President. Let us welcome Shirali.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Plouffe, for that introduction. My name is Shirali Nigam, and I'm a rising senior at George Washington University. I'm excited to share my experiences finding a mentor and how to create an optimal mentor-student relationship with you all today. First, I'd like to address the question some of you may be asking, why do I need a mentor? With the breadth of friendly classmates and upperclassmen to field your questions about classes, this is a reasonable question. However, the knowledge, experience, and guidance you can gain from someone who is out working in the field is far more beneficial in the long run. Given this experience working in the field, mentors can reflect on their own course curriculum and share with you which classes they took that they found most useful and which classes they wish they had taken so they would have been better prepared for their job. In turn, you will be a highly sought-after job candidate as you will have learned and developed from these courses, and biomedical engineering firms clearly value certain skills. Second, once you have established a relationship with a mentor, they can provide constructive advice and help you as you comb through summer opportunities and assist you in deciding what move is best for your long-term goals. For example, last year I was awarded a research grant and offered an internship at a medical device company. Both were wonderful opportunities that I was extremely excited about, and in turn I reached a roadblock when trying to decide which one to accept. I presented the situation to my mentors, yes, more than one of them, and shared with them what I thought the advantages and disadvantages for each were. While none of them told me which offer to accept, they all provided constructive feedback and shared their unique perspective on how both opportunities could shape and help me reach my future goals. After discussing it with them, it was clear to me which would have a more valuable impact on my long-term goals, and I was able to make a decision with a clear head. Having mentors to go to and discuss this with not only provided me with a unique and unbiased perspective on the matter, but also their breadth of experience, having already worked in various sections of the biomedical engineering field, allowed them to shed light on the situation by pointing out advantages and disadvantages that I would not have realized myself. Your relationship with your mentor is really what you make of it. Another huge advantage of having a mentor is being able to run professional activities by them, such as doing mock job interviews, having them read over grant applications, or anything else. A mentor will be your friend who can provide you kind but constructive criticism. Their years of real-world experience also make them well-equipped with knowledge that can provide you accurate and helpful comments. And of course, if you have a great relationship with your mentor, they can be key for networking. Your mentors are likely to know people in any area of the biomedical engineering field that you're interested in, but if they can't answer your questions, they can connect you to someone who can. So don't be afraid to ask for something, as chances are most mentors can and are willing to help. Next, I'd like to discuss mentee best practices. In my opinion, following these guidelines are the way to get the most out of your mentorship. First, upon your initial meeting, whether it be face-to-face, a phone call, or an email, give yourself a clear and honest introduction and make sure your mentor is aware of your future goals. The more accurate information you can share with your mentor about your future plans, the better they can help you and guide you to achieve your future goals. While you may have researched your mentor's work experience and past projects, chances are your mentor doesn't know much about us undergraduates in the first meeting. So it's important to give yourself a clear and thorough introduction. Furthermore, this meeting is a great time to define with your mentor what your goals for the mentorship are. For example, do you want to set a time to talk on the phone every month about your academic achievements, or will you reach out as needed? It's important to make this clear in the beginning so that neither party feels that the other reaches out too infrequently or too frequently. Furthermore, there is no rule that you can only have one mentor. In fact, if you can maintain and keep up a good relationship with more than one mentor, I'd advise to have multiple. Being able to get feedback and advice from multiple people with different perspectives is beneficial to give you a clear perspective on whatever you need mentoring about. And if you're seeking out multiple mentors, find people with different experiences so you can get a good breadth of perspectives while asking for feedback. For example, if you attended a specific University X, aspire to go to University Y for graduate school, and then work at Company Z, and you find a mentor who did exactly that, that's awesome. Definitely reach out to them. but it's also important to connect with mentors who have done something slightly different, as they can provide perspectives and question your decisions to make sure you are, in fact, pursuing the path that you want to, and your ideas of what you want to do in the future are clear and correct. You never know. You may even end up finding something that they're doing interesting and want to change your mind. Finally, the outcome of the mentorship is dependent on you, the mentee. To get the most out of the experience, you need to prepare for your meetings, communicate updates, and talk with your mentor often, and understand that this will be an honest exchange of advice. Your mentor will sometimes give you constructive criticism, but this is what you want. You want to be questioned about your goals and your plans so that you can be sure you're following the path you desire. And when it comes down to it, the mentor is there to help you achieve those. All you have to do is ask. I know it can sometimes be difficult to figure out what to talk to your mentor about, but since it's important to communicate frequently, I've shared some talking points to engage with your mentor here. First, talk about your courses. Share what classes you're taking, which ones you like or which ones you don't like, and why, and hear your mentor's perspective on what they think of the class. Maybe they'll have tips for you on how to learn the material or how to approach your instructor so you can form a better relationship with them, or which courses they may have taken in their undergraduate or graduate careers and found very useful in the real world. Second, you can talk to them about an internship or job opportunity. You don't already have to be deciding between offers when you reach out, but you can share what you'd like to be doing. Your mentor can help groom you to be a strong candidate, and they may even have recommendations for places you can get good experience. And of course, if you're trying to decide between offers you already have, mentors are a great place to get advice as well. The relationship doesn't always have to be you asking for advice, though. Ask your mentor about them. Did they always know they wanted to do biomedical engineering? What made them decide to get into the field? Did they ever struggle with what they wanted to do after their degree? How did they decide between industry, graduate school, or something else? Hearing from your mentor and their thought processes in this situation you will likely face at some point can be extremely helpful. And sometimes, as your mentor is sharing their stories, you'll even get to hear the advice of your mentor's mentor. In closing, I just wanted to touch on some good resources for you to reach out to get a mentor. It's important to note that biomedical engineering is an interdisciplinary field, so your mentor doesn't have to be a biomedical engineer. You can reach out to other kinds of engineers, doctors, business professionals, physicians, computer scientists, really anyone who you think could provide you with unique and helpful feedback and who you mesh well with. One initiative I led in my BME student chapter last year was putting together an alumni database of where students are now, what they're working on, what advanced degrees they may have pursued, etc. Your chapter may have a similar resource that you could use to get in touch with biomedical engineers and others in the field. Secondly, your professors are a great resource. Whether they can connect you with alumni that they're in touch with or professionals they've encountered in the field, they'll definitely be able to find someone who can help you and provide guidance if they cannot do it themselves. Professors often meet with higher-ups in companies and industry to discuss how they can adjust undergraduate curriculum at their university to make the student better qualified job candidates. So your professors do have connections, and they'll likely be willing to use them to help you. One resource most students neglect to take advantage of is your university staff. For example, your department manager or anyone who might work with BME students but isn't necessarily a biomedical engineer themselves can still provide helpful feedback and resources to help you achieve your goals. And of course, your fellow students are always willing to lend an ear and help you if they can. One thing many students don't know is that as a member of BMES, you have access to a member directory with a list of biomedical engineers and others in the biomedical engineering field from all over the world who are willing to guide you and lend a hand. You just have to reach out by contacting them through the directory. I'd also like to bring your attention to a great event that my student chapter at George Washington University will be hosting this fall. Not only will we have a career and job fair and research presentations, but we will be hosting various biomedical engineering professionals. This would be a great opportunity for students to find a mentor and establish a mentorship relationship. So whether you're attending this event or something similar at your school, these are great chances to meet people who are working in the field and talk to them more before deciding who you would want to pick as your mentor. This flyer will provide you more details, and feel free to email us with any questions or register for this event if you'd like. To conclude my section of this webinar, I'd like to thank you all for your attention and leave you with one piece of advice. Mentors not only inspire you, but they have the ability to see ahead and help you navigate the journey as you work to achieve your future goals. No matter how many mentors you have or who you ask to be your mentor, go into the mentorship with an open mind. Be ready for constructive criticism and helpful advice, and take the initiative to make the most out of your mentorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Niggum. Please remember to submit your questions at any time during the webinar by using the online chat function in the lower left of your screen, and questions will be addressed shortly by the speakers at the end of their presentations. So we will now be hearing from Dr. Thomas Webster, who is a BMES Fellow, Professor and Department Chair of Chemical Engineering at Northeastern University, the scientific founder of NanoV, BMES board member from 2004 to 2018 with affiliations with chair, and will be the conference chair for the BMES in Hartford. And please welcome Dr. Webster.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Shirali, for that nice student perspective of mentoring. And certainly, thank you, Michelle from BMES, for putting webinar together. I hope everybody who is listening has seen the plethora of webinars that BMES puts together, because they're really an outstanding service to the memberships. I can't think of a topic that is more near and dear to my heart than mentorship. I think throughout all of our lives, we tend to look back at maybe a handful of people that have made a real difference in things that we do, career decisions, making decisions that lead us to being happy every day. And really, that's a mentor. That's somebody that you have discovered throughout your professional career or personal career as somebody that you could call a mentor. So as you just heard, my last name is Webster, and one of the things I often do when thinking about new ideas or things in webinars or workshops is I often go back to the dictionary. And I'm pretty fond of the Webster's Dictionary, and I looked up what is the definition of a mentor. So on this slide, you can see what was listed as the definition of a mentor, and I underlined two very important parts to the Webster's definition. And obviously, mentor can be a verb, but I think here we're talking about mentor being a noun, a person, and that person is somebody who's experienced and trusted. And I think we all can kind of appreciate the experienced part because, and Shirali mentioned this, and generally when we talk about mentors, we're in a specific subject area, we're in a specific career path, or some interest that we have. So obviously we look for somebody who has experience in that field to ask them questions. But I think something that's important to consider in this webinar is the second word that I underlined, and that's trusted. Somebody who you can trust with, maybe it's confiding in them something that you would not share with everybody, or maybe it's just building a trustful relationship that enables you to get the most out of your mentorship. And I can honestly think back to the mentors that I had, whether it was in undergraduate experience or graduate experience or now as a faculty member. And I think the people that I would call my best mentors were those people that I trusted with sharing something, that I would not have shared with everybody, and certainly I trusted their opinion. So I think this is a very important thing to think about when looking for a mentor, when getting a mentor, and really continuing to have a relationship with a mentor is, do you trust them, and do you trust their experienced opinion? And hopefully the answer is yes, because if so, I would think you found an excellent person to be a mentor. Now, the things, of course, that I think are important also to think about, in addition to somebody who's experienced or somebody who you can trust their opinion, is how do you find the right mentor? And I think Shirali touched upon this very well in her part of the webinar, is I never have thought about just having one person as a mentor. I mean, our lives are so multifaceted. You know, I think most people are graduate students who are on this webinar. As a graduate student, you have to balance so many different things. You have courses, you have your research, you have thinking of your career path. All of these things could have different, and probably should have different people, different mentors. So no matter where you are in life, I think it is very important to have more than one person help you and give you advice according to the things that you're dealing with. So I think clearly the first step, to finding this excellent mentor who you can get great advice from is really to find the right person. So I think your first question, should really be, as somebody who's looking for a mentor, is what is it specifically that I want advice in? Do I want professional advice? Should I go to industry, or should I go into academia, or should I go to medical school? What is it in my profession that I'm looking for? I think certainly a lot of us have experience with academic mentors. In fact, I would hope all universities actually have an academic mentor for you. And we all know those kind of questions. What courses should I take? I'm not doing well in this course. Should I withdraw from the course and take it next semester? Obviously, that's all academic help, which can be very different than professional advice on where to take your career or how to build up a resume that becomes important for that career. I think the third bullet is actually what I have gotten the most out of my mentorships in the past, and that's really help networking. And I can think of, my own advisors when I was a graduate student or even an undergraduate student. They knew very clearly that I wanted to go into a university, that I wanted to become a professor. So when I was at events, whether it was at a conference like BMES or whether it was at some local university event, they would introduce me to people who could help me become a professor. And that networking has been priceless. Those were connections that I made, that they helped me make, that it would have been very hard for me just to go up to a random person and say, oh, you're a professor at this university or that university, I would love to get a job there. That's a hard thing to do, but if you have a mentor who you have expressed your desire to either work for a university or become a postdoc at a university, and they know it, then they can help you at these events to really network. And I think for anybody who's been to a BMES conference, you know very well the university receptions that occur are some of the best networking events anywhere. So that is critical, to have a mentor who understands your desire to network and will help you network. I think the fourth bullet that I have on here, I can definitely recall mentors in my life who have been there to support me when I needed it. I think most people in graduate school and maybe some people in undergraduate school, you begin to question what you're doing. Did I pick the right major? Should I get a PhD? It's really challenging, and I have no idea when I'm going to graduate. There's no real light at the end of the tunnel many times for a graduate student. So just having somebody that you can go to who reminds you of why you did this in the first place can mentally really help you get through certain situations. So I think just having that support network that you build around you through your mentor is so critical. and so important for continuing on your career path. And I would bet many people without mentors might have lost the energy or lost the motivation to fulfill some of their lifelong goals that they're so happy that they did, that they finished through advice from mentors to be able to accomplish something. And I think certainly, there's a whole slew of other reasons that we don't really have time to talk about, and they could be very specific to your situation. So, I think that the first thing to think about is when you're looking for a mentor is what is it that you want to be mentored in? And if you can answer that and answer that very specifically, then you can start looking in the appropriate community to find that person. And you can begin to look at the skill set of that person that could really help you. As just one last point on this slide, we can probably all look around at our peer network and acknowledge who is really good about supporting your goals emotionally, right? And it would probably be a different person who might be very helpful at telling you that you should withdraw from a course because you didn't do very well in the exams and you weren't keeping up in work activity. And compare that and contrast that with somebody who can give you advice on whether to go into industry or graduate school. So all these people can be different depending on their skill set and what it is that you want to be mentored in. So other steps on how to find a mentor, and I think obviously, BMES's program in mentorship is one example of a program that certain academic societies create that can help link you to somebody to really help you, become a mentor. And I think the wonderful thing about BMES's program in mentorship is the people who volunteer on my end, right, somebody who would be a mentor, we are deeply committed to the success of the membership of BMES. And again, whether that's a student or a fellow member or whoever it might be within the society, is we are very committed to the success of biomedical engineering, of the society, and that's really helping one another. So I know firsthand the people that you would get access to through the BMES Mentor Program are people whose heart are in the right place. And that's not always true when you find a mentor. I imagine some people can think of a mentor relationship that perhaps didn't go as best as you wanted it to, and you could think maybe that person was not in my interest and maybe they had other reasons to be a mentor. So certainly a program at BMES is something to look into very closely. As I think Shirali and some was mentioned, there are also universities that have mentor programs. As an undergraduate, most departments will actually assign faculty and maybe an academic advisor who's a staff person to be your mentor. So that's obviously another way to do it. But one of the things I would point you to, and you don't have to do this now, in fact I hope you don't, but you do it after the webinar, is if you go to this website, we actually created a series of questions within our department here at Northeastern that guide you to find the right mentor. So in other words, it's a series of questions that help you decide what is it you want to be mentored in. And then at the end of these series of questions, you actually get a list of alumni from our department here at Northeastern in chemical engineering of people who have volunteered to help you with that particular area. So that kind of a website is very helpful because it's not just an open-ended, do you want a mentor? Great, here's a list of people you can contact, but it actually helps you understand and figure out what is it you want to be mentored in, and here's a list of people that have experience in that area that can help you. And in our particular website, for example, we give out the email address and phone number of the person who has agreed to be a mentor. And by the way, I would be happy to share the code for this website for anybody that wants to use it, whether it's your department at your university, whether it's a professional society like BMES, or maybe it's a student society that you are a member of. Whoever wants to use this, we'd be happy to give you the code because as you can imagine, it took us a while to develop this, and we really want it to be beneficial to as many people as possible. You have to find your own mentors. We're not going to volunteer our mentors who volunteered for chemical engineering at Northeastern, but once you find your own mentors, it's easy to use this website. Student clubs is a great one for that emotional support kind of mentor, where maybe you already have it covered through BMES or some professional society, how to get advice on career paths, and maybe your university mentoring program really helps you with the more academic things. But student clubs, in my mind, are great clubs to give you that emotional mentorship, of going through the ups and downs that we all go through and all went through in our academic careers. So the last one is certainly the bullet there under programmatic ways, is really create your own kind of program or own kind of situation for a mentor-mentee relationship. Again, if most of you are graduate students, in your research lab, if it's large enough, you could create mentor-mentee programs in your research lab, where sometimes this happens informally, where a more senior graduate student helps a more junior graduate student, but certainly you could have it be more formal. For the people who are more shy and maybe wouldn't reach out for a mentor, in your own lab group, you could set up a mentor-mentee relationship to help you excel and be the best you can in your research lab. There are many also non-programmatic ways. I have a lot of experience throughout my career of certainly asking friends of mine for advice on things. Now, I might not think of that as a formal mentorship program, but certainly they have been there when I have had need for advice, and vice versa. I have been there when they have been asking for advice. So I think really in mentorship, you just need to be bold, and you have to ask someone for help, and you have to be specific about what it is you want help with. And I often find that those relationships last very long. The programmatic ones, they can last long too, but the ones in which you're outgoing and you find somebody you just connect with and you ask them for advice on various things tend to be the ones that I think last a pretty long time. In fact, a lifetime. I have friends that I have counted on for advice that go all the way back to my high school days, and treat those relationships very special, and certainly as a mentor kind of relationship. So I also wanted to share with you, I was actually a BMES member in 1995. So I've been a BMES member for quite a while and have been doing this for quite a while. So I wanted to share with you just the different types of mentoring experiences that you can be in. And it's not just all about academics, or it's not all about professional career paths, but throughout my career I've been involved obviously as a faculty advisor to many graduate students, many undergraduate students, and you can obviously experience a lot of research advice that occur through mentorship that is incumbent upon that kind of a role. I've also been an academic advisor to a number of students to help them decide on classes to take, etc. I think in my role over the past 7 years as department chair, I also serve in formal relationships as a mentor to some of our junior faculty as well as our senior faculty. I've also been a mentor by professional societies where obviously you have a different subgroup of people that you're offering advice on career paths. I started a number of companies, so I've been an industry mentor, especially to a lot of today's students who want to be more entrepreneurial and want to learn how do you start a company off of your research. So I often become an industry mentor to some of those students. And of course, probably my most proud mentorships is I'm the parent of 3 girls, and I'm the friend, I think, to a lot of people. I hope to a lot of people. So certainly through those interactions, They're all different in how you provide mentorship, and understanding it from my point of view, being a mentor, the first step is really understanding what do people want to get out of a mentorship program. And you can probably appreciate my advice to my 3 daughters is much different than the types of questions I'm asked for somebody who wants to start a company. I would also mention to you that I'm also a mentee, right? I really think in order to be a great mentor, you need to be an active mentee or somebody who has another person who is a mentor. So I have my own set of mentors, and I've had them at any age, and they change depending on what phase of my career I'm in. But that's really the best way, I think, to be a good mentor is for yourself to be a mentee and have your own mentor in some particular aspect of your life. So here's also some life lessons that I have learned when being a mentor. And I think even if you're a mentee, I think a lot of this is true too. And I think as with anything in life, you're a great mentor if you are flexible. And there has to be a lot of flexibility in getting to know the person that you're being the mentor towards. There has to be a lot of flexibility in trying to understand what is it that they want to get out of this mentor relationship. So some life lessons to take into your current role as a mentee or if you're a mentor to somebody else. And I think the first one I could not understate enough. You have to be clear to your mentor what it is you want to get out of that relationship. Are they specific questions? Are they more general career path type questions? But the clearer you can be to your mentor, the better that relationship is going to be. Is it solely, and I've had people do this to me, that they want me to be their mentor to help them network. So is it solely to help them be a networking person and introduce you to other people in the field that can help you during your career path? I think also what's been critical to me is my mentor meetings are much different when they're in my office compared to if they're at, for example, Starbucks or something really, really informal. I think as soon as you go into someone's office, there's a formality that is established which might hurt or impede some people to share information with you. So I'm a big fan of having mentor meetings in informal places because I feel like that's when the barriers are lowest and you can really get to know somebody. I think also it's important to meet often, and I know Shirali mentioned this, to come up with an expectation with your mentor, but even if you don't have an agenda, just meeting somebody and saying, yes, everything's going great, or no, things are not going so great. I think just visual meeting is important. I think certainly we've talked about this, get to know one another, right? It's not all about work, but share personal stories, what you like to do for fun. Anything that can help the mentor get to know you is better for you. Be specific. The other thing is don't be afraid to change mentors if it's not working. Again, we're all at different phases in our lives, and sometimes you need help from somebody at just one phase of your life. So I think don't be afraid to change mentors. So I wanted to leave you with really 2 quick case studies of a good mentorship and a bad mentorship. And here's my case study of one mentorship that didn't go so well. And I think you can, if you read through this, you can easily see what happened, right? And, whenever you start a mentor relationship, there's an initial meeting. The student comes in and says, you were assigned to me as my mentor. That word assigned could not be worse for establishing a good mentor relationship. You don't want to be assigned to somebody. You want to have them choose you or have sort of a volunteer type mentor relationship rather than something you have to do. So, the story goes on. I say, yes, that's correct. I'm so excited to see you. And then there's silence and uncomfortable silence. And then you say, can you tell me something about yourself? What hobbies do you like to do? Where are you from? And your mentee says, I'm doing fine, short head nod, and then more silence. And then you say, okay, well, here's what I like to do. I like to run. I'm from Philadelphia. How about you? And then more silence. Maybe they offer you a couple of words of what they like to do and where they're from, but you get the picture. You're trying to start a conversation and get an understanding of what it is the student, or person would like to get out of this relationship, and it goes nowhere. In contrast, a great mentorship is one that it just flows. Everything flows. The student or somebody came into your office. They're so excited that they have you as a mentor. That makes me feel good. If somebody says they're excited to see me, it also makes me feel like this is going to be an easy conversation, and maybe I can easily figure out how to give some advice that would really help this person. So I, go through, and you can read on the slide what the specific case study is, but it's very easy flowing. You can tell that the person thought about this relationship before they came to see you, and they're excited to have you and to learn from, my experiences as a mentor or in the career pathway that I've taken. So just in closing, some more real helpful hints, that I think to keep in mind for any mentor relationship, and really the number one in my mind is the more time you put into it, the better you get to know your mentor, the better that your mentor knows you, then really that better relationship will result, and you'll get the best advice possible. I think certainly having fun is very important to everything you do in life, or else why are we doing it? So if you can have fun in your mentor relationship, not be inhibited or not feel like you're putting somebody out of their way when you're meeting with them, but just have fun and share stories and try to get the best you can. So you can see some of the other really good hints I think that I have learned through my career, getting as many mentors as you need for your particular part, evaluating, reevaluating your relationship, and if it's not working, moving on to another mentor. But certainly just, I can tell you in my career, I look back at the mentors that I've had great relationships with, still have great relationships with, and can see very easily how they've changed my life. So I think with that, we wanted to open it up to some questions.
Thank you, Dr. Webster. So we are going to take some questions. Remember, you can continue to submit your questions as we go. If new questions pop up in your mind, we're still taking questions. And we wanted to start with a few questions that we got before the webinar that were sent in advance. So the first question that was sent in was about professional relationships, so those outside of academia. And how do you get these relationships? How are they different than what you would see in academia? So how do you build a professional relationship once you enter the workforce?
Yeah, so Brian, I could add some thoughts to that. I do think professional relationships are different than the ones you might have at your university, for example, or if you're working for a company, for that specific company. And they're mainly different because that person, that professional mentor, can be from outside of your university, or it would be great if they're outside of their university and they're outside of your company. So the professional relationships that work well to me is somebody, they're obviously in your profession, so maybe it's the medical device part of the Biomedical Engineering Society or the biomaterials part of the Biomedical Engineering Society, but they work for a different company or they're at a different university. And I think your questions you ask that person are much different than a local mentor. So if you know somebody who's in a medical device industry that's not your company, you could ask and be very interested in trends of the market, or what's happening at their company to understand the FDA, right? Or just more general type of approaches for that particular field, rather than a local mentor, which I think you're using a local mentor, somebody who's at your company, somebody who's at your university, you're not only could be asking those questions, but you're looking at more, how do I navigate this company, or how do I navigate this university to be the most successful?
And just to add on to that, I think going from your undergraduate or graduate career and into the professional workforce, it's important that to keep in touch with some of your mentors from your student mentor days, even though your interaction will change a bit. I think since they've known you for so long and have kind of gone through the changes with you, trying to figure out if you want to go to graduate school or industry, or if you change your classes or major, something like that, they have a good background about who you are. And even if they can't offer specific advice, once you enter the professional world, I think they definitely can provide advice and clarity when you're trying to decide what you really want to do.
Thank you. The next advanced question that we got was, how do you suggest we network and build relationships specifically for postdoctoral positions? So this goes to the grad students who are looking at academics.
Yeah, so this is a great question, right? Is not only how do you find postdoc opportunities, but how do you find one that matches your career ambitions? So I think, a couple of advice that I would offer, if you look at a university, or if you look at an organization like BMES, you will find groups of postdocs, groups of faculty who are looking to hire postdocs. So I think there's a kind of brute force approach where you let your PhD advisor or your research advisor know that this is what you're looking for, and ask them, could you please introduce me to some people at BMES, for example, that are looking for postdocs, and that has worked, I think, fairly well in my experience. There's also programmatic things that can be done. I know at some of the annual conferences at BMES, we've talked about postdoc receptions. So sending a message, to the people who are running the conference, wouldn't it be great if we had a reception for people who are current postdocs and people looking to become postdocs and people looking for a postdoc? So that could be more of a programmatic way to have connections. But I think even, just going to seminars, for example, at your university, where you might be inviting external speakers, approaching them, and are you looking for postdocs? So that's all, kind of how you can identify the opportunity. But of course, just like going to graduate school, or if you're an undergrad looking for a research lab to join, the best people to ask on how an experience are the current people in that lab, right? So asking the current postdocs, do you feel you're professionally developing in this lab? Or do you feel like you're just doing, a set of experiments? So I think it's a combination of trying to find that opportunity and trying to find if your postdoc advisor matches the type of experience you're looking for.
I completely agree, and I especially agree with talking to people who work in the lab currently. I know when I attended BMES last year and I attended some of the networking dinners and university receptions, it was really helpful to talk to students and postdocs and grad students who already worked in the lab, because I got a better feel than just from the website or research articles the principal investigator may have published, of more of what they actually do in the lab and whether the lifestyle and everything would be a good fit for myself. So I think talking to people in the lab and then being able to reach out to the lab directors and say, I spoke to this person in your lab, it helps you kind of already establish a relationship, and I think they'd take your request more seriously because you have that connection already.
And the next question we have, actually we have several people who asked this question along this line. How do you maintain this mentee-mentor relationship, and how do you gauge if this mentor is a good mentor for you and where you want to go?
Excellent question.
Personally, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Shirali.
I was just going to say that in my experience, trying to maintain a relationship with a mentor, I've also kind of struggled with I don't want to bother them too much, but I also want to make sure this is like a mentorship and I can continue asking for ongoing advice. And so in order to do that, I kind of just reach out. I've established at the beginning that I'll reach out as needed, kind of asking for advice and help with anything, and then also just casually to share accomplishments or things that have happened in the last couple weeks since I last talked to them. So I think just kind of reaching out, not necessarily always asking for advice. If you just send like a one-line email or see them around your university, depending on what kind of mentor they are, just communicating with them enough that it's clear that it's a mentorship. And I think this really depends on like who your mentor is and how often you see them. But in my experience, at least, whether it's like you talk to them in person or send them an email, communicating once a week or once every 2 weeks, even if it's something mild, not necessarily asking them to do something like give you advice, just letting them know what's happening is a good way to keep up the relationship.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the best relationships I've had for someone who is my mentor or somebody that I'm mentoring is a frequent communication. And it doesn't have to, as Shirali said, it doesn't always have to be advice on something, but something that goes a long way in my book is, a thank you. So when you meet with somebody and you kind of go through a discussion of a particular issue and you offered your opinion, and of course maybe they went to other people, hopefully they did, and asked for their opinion, but then you find out, maybe it's through an email again or a personal conversation, what did they end up doing? And was it helpful what they ended up doing, or did they wish they didn't do it? Knowing, the outcome of advice or that relationship is very important. But I think it's something that's frequent, that you have a frequent communication rather than, once every year, in which you would kind of forget probably what some of those conversations were. So I would, be a proponent of something that's a little more frequent and a more updating, because once that relationship reaches a certain point, I think the mentor probably, and maybe this would happen earlier for certain mentors, but as it reaches a certain point, you have the mentor following up, right? If you see them at a coffee function or around campus, right, or in the hallway at an office, then the mentor would say, oh, how did that go, or how did it turn out? So I think that communication, constant communication, is important.
And kind of following up on that, how do we approach a person to be a mentor? Does it start with informal conversations about experience, or do you formally go up to someone and say, can you be my mentor? I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with like approaching, a professor or something and saying, please be my mentor.
At least what I've done in the past is to kind of just first start talking to the person before I officially ask them to be a mentor. I would just talk to them and kind of make sure that my understanding of their experiences and whether they're willing to be a mentor, if it all meshes well. And then, just kind of talking to them almost as if they already are your mentor once or twice. And then I usually follow it up with an email or say, is it okay if I continue reaching out to you and asking for advice? Because I completely understand that it feels awkward, at least from a student perspective, to ask someone to make this a formal mentorship. So just kind of asking them, is it okay if I continue to reach out for advice? Or, and then I think it's both parties kind of understand that this is leading into a mentorship.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think when I look back on a lot of relationships I've been in, they may not formally have ever been called, through some program, a mentor-mentee relationship, but I think it's understood that this is somebody that you've been meeting with frequently to talk about certain situations and giving advice. So I don't necessarily know if you need to call it a mentor-mentee relationship. I think it can help. So for example, like for programs that we are doing in our department as well as what BMES is doing, I think if you have a program that's called mentor-mentee, then it could be easier for some people to sign up for that because it's more of a program rather than a ad hoc kind of thing. But in the end, I think a really good mentor-mentee relationship is that relationship, right? It's the trust, the getting experience. That's the most important thing. And what it's called, I don't think is really that important.
Thank you. And the last question we're going to have some time for is, how do international students get mentors? And on that same vein, if you're in a different discipline, so you're an undergrad in mechanical engineering and want a supervisor from biomedical engineering, how do you cross those barriers either through an ocean or even just departmentally?
Yeah, so and so I could offer some suggestions that it depends how outgoing you are. So if you're an outgoing person, just going up to people, if you're an international student or a student from a different department, just going up to somebody and again approaching them and saying, do you have time to get a cup of coffee? I have a couple of questions I would love to ask you. That is enough. That's enough for me to then meet with somebody and talk about things. And then if you thought that relationship was good, following it up with subsequent, as we were discussing, subsequent meetings or subsequent conversations is a great way to build that relationship. I think if you're not outgoing and you feel uncomfortable doing that, then looking for programs that can do it. And if your university or your international student society doesn't exist or doesn't have a mentor program, I think it would be a great idea to start one, to start something that could be more formal, like developing a website that we have or developing something like this, a workshop or a webinar that could help match people. So I think if you don't see that around you and you don't see that opportunity close to you, then being proactive and starting something is a very good idea. But I think quite simply matching, finding somebody to have a simple starting conversation with to see if that's the right mentor has been an approach that has worked.
And just to add to that, in regards to finding a mentor, perhaps from another discipline, I think if you can just do some research before talking to them and find some common ground that you have, perhaps if, for example, in regards to mechanical engineering, if they've done a paper that's kind of related to biomedical engineering, I think if you have that kind of as a starting point to talk and just introduce yourself, say, I read this paper, I'm in a different major, but I'm still really interested in talking with you. I think most mentors are very well receptive and still very happy to meet with students.
Thank you, Shirali. Thank you, Tom. This is going to conclude our webinar for today. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Please stay online and make sure we take you to complete that brief webinar evaluation before you go. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. I also want to remind you that the webinar is being recorded or was being recorded for your convenience. The slides and archived audio recording will be available on the BMES website probably within the next 48 hours. If you have signed up for this webinar, you'll be notified by email when the archived materials have been posted. And I do hope you join us for other BMES events. There are a few to share here on this slide. To learn more about upcoming activities and events, you can always visit the website for BMES at bmes.org. Thank you.